right, welcome along to another episode of the Deep In Coffee Hour. I'm your host, Neil, and today we are going to be cracking open Deep In Tokenomics after 2025's brutal reality check. Projects pumped nodes with endless emissions, but without any real revenue, flywheel stalled, inflation crushed prices, sell pressure mounted, and a huge percent of users and node runners churned as the rewards dried up. Pioneers like Akash tried to fix this with burn by equilibrium mechanics, using customer fiat revenue to torch tokens, creating sinks to try and balance supply, and improving features so that utility drives demand. All smart measures in my view. But for everyday holders, it's not just theory. Sustainable tokens need growth backed by pressure from real world utility. Without it, our bags are just promises and vapor. After last week's show, I was chatting to some friends about who are in the space as well, and they were telling me about Warp Gaming Chain, who are doing something really cool with their tokenomics that could, in this person's opinion, potentially change the way deep in token mechanics are designed in future. So naturally, I ran out to try and see if I could get them on the show so that we could talk about a subject close to my own heart, which is tokenomics. And it's worth noting that Warp just had their TGE last week. I think it's about 5 or 7 days ago. And if you look at the chart for WRP, it's looking pretty tasty relative to pretty much any chart last year. So with that, I would love to welcome to the show Matt, who's the CEO of Warp, and Daryl, who is Daryl. Am I right? It's Capital Guilds.
Head of Warp Capital Guilds. So I manage the distribution layer within the guilds within Warp ecosystem.
All right, cool. So welcome to the show. I'm really looking forward to diving into this a little bit more in more detail because I think it's really been a problem last year anyway for tokens generally in the space. Deep in, there's a lot of deep in believers who, like myself, I suppose, who basically suffered 2025, I think is probably 100%. A fair way to describe it. But before we get into that, maybe, Matt, if you want to go first and just tell us a little bit about your backstory and how you got into this space and maybe just a little bit, just a high level on what Warp is and what you guys are trying to build.
Sure thing. So I'm Matt. I've been 20 years in the games industry now and in Web3 as a founder for the last sort of 4. And Warp is basically trying to solve the problem that we've seen that games suck. They're terrible. Web3 games have been bad. They haven't made any money. They've encouraged a lot of farming. They've encouraged the very worst traits of Web3, which is exploitation, breaking into things, hacking stuff, and without any reward. Like the promise of gaming was ownership, was essentially creating like an RWA market for digital goods, like to create this kind of market of those things that people have already spent money on and transfer that over into Web3. But instead of actually the existing incumbent Web2 people using this, we decided that we were going to make our own games, and we kind of were bad at that as an industry. So Warp sets out to change all of that. And the way to do that is through publishing. So publishing sits at the intersection of a VC who's going to give a company a ton of money, and then a platform like Beam or Carve or Steam or anything like this that then distributes the games. What we do is we essentially take a revenue share and we pay for the user acquisition. And we have some very cool decentralized ways we do that, which is why the Shaolin is on the show to help us go through it. But at our heart, we are redistributing the revenue that we bring in through these publishing deals through the node holders. And those node holders are not just people who buy the nodes because they want to take part in the network and validate it. These are actually the games themselves, so that the value of the distribution rises with their contribution to the network. And of course, the capital guilds, which are an interlinked section of communities that themselves are given nodes to then further fuel the UA. Xiao will definitely be able to tell us more about that. But I'm really excited to be here because my belief in deep in and tokenomics comes from a long-standing work in game balance, monetization design. Like I've designed monetization in mobile games, and to be honest, I've seen that monetization design should be approached with an expert care, and it should be done by people who've, for example, worked on $1 million a day projects, as opposed to people who came out of college and said, "Hey, I'm just going to join this new thing." So I think everyone's noticed that, tokens have gone down, nodes have been like not performing the way they should, because a lot of this was based on the idea that speculatively everything will rise and that will take care of everything. But as costs have gone up, as markets became more efficient, that uplift never came. So we have to be real, and we have to build a business that supports the token. And that's why our token is a utility token, as opposed to build a speculative token that then backs the business. So this is how we do it and why we do it.
Right. Yeah, I think that's pretty true. I think just generally, I don't even think it's necessarily a DPIN problem, although I think in DPIN, I think the promise was something that didn't match up with what ended up being delivered. But I think generally speaking, if you zoom right out at all of Web3, I think a lot of the tokens in recent years, there wasn't enough thought put into, like demand, basically the demand side. It was like, oh, we'll burn some tokens. That takes care of the supply side of the equation. But it's just
it takes care of the rarity, but not people wanting it, right? It's
exactly.
You can say diamonds are rare, but they're not, right? But people would still want them, even if De Beers released all of its stock of diamonds. Even though the price would be a lot less, people would still want diamonds because they're beautiful and they're pretty. I mean, you can have an incredibly rare plant that is horrible and poisonous. Just because it's rare doesn't make it valuable.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure why that's like. It seems so obvious, really, when you've spent any time in the space at all, but it doesn't seem to have been baked into a lot of the projects. So yeah, listen, thanks for the introduction. The Shaolin, Daryl, do you want to walk us through, like, give us a high view of your backstory and a little bit about what capital guilds are and how they work?
Yeah, no worries. I've been in the gaming space. I kind of revisited full circle. I started out in university as an intern over at this company that was merged with Vivendi, based out of Europe, and Universal. So games like Spyro the Dragon, Crash Bandicoot, kind of were the flagship. I got into corporate after that, in terms of traditional, but I came full circle about 5-6 years ago into Web3, and then 3 to 4 years ago into Web3 gaming. But what makes it really magical for me really is just the opportunity to do things with the opportunity of passion and love for all the different areas within Web3, because I feel like the ethos of decentralization and giving people an opportunity to own part of the ecosystem, to contribute and to value it. And so even for me, when I heard first about DPINs, and mind you, I'm wearing a Kudos ring, I have my Seeker phone, so full-fledged into the ecosystem with regards to what this means. But I think what it really comes down to is, the validation of your data, your information, and then actually being rewarded versus paying money to have people use your data and then resell it to all these other areas where they get to monetize and they get to get value. But for us at Warp Guilds, Warp Capital Guilds, is the fact that we now actually properly give deal flows, right? When you talk about syncs and you talk about utilization of tokenomics, it really comes back from, the studios to the nodes to the guilds, which I believe not only creates a level of demand in terms of distribution, but really it's like, how do we get back into it where we can have, ownership as well as contributions to what is overall, a trillion, multi-trillion, dollar space. And it's just one of those things that we love it, because instead of being transactional, which is how normally it was in the past with Web3 gaming and gaming guilds, is the fact that we do this in terms of recurring, right? We have multiple games, multiple opportunities to engage, interact with studios, give them direct access, but more importantly, deal flow that's sustainable. And I think that's the biggest catch, is when you have a flywheel that really drives sustainability, right? And being a regen versus it being a degen really just shows you what is possible, and having that opportunity to work as part of the team and buying into the vision that Matt Buxton has been provided to me, as well as all of the guilds, has been extremely rewarding, because we are real players is what Warp stands for. And so someone who's, created guilds and created things in the past, right, on the traditional gaming side, and now doing it on the Web3 side has been really demonstrative of what's possible. And I know that because guilds reach out to me, not necessarily about deal flow, but like how they can participate in an ecosystem that they're now a part of because they have ownership of a node, right? They have a runway, they have the ability to do things in a way that they never had before. And it's all because of what we are doing over here at Warp.
Okay, so yeah, look, guys, this could be a 5-hour episode. Genuinely,
of course,
have been a gamer for years. I used to run some of the biggest LAN gaming events back before internet was, capable. Well, in Ireland, we were very slow to adopt broadband. So the crazy internet deals we used to have to do for this chain of gaming internet cafes. And I also set up a games guild back at the very start of the P2E gaming thing and on Polygon, and that was a fast way to lose a lot of money, I must add. Absolutely. Yeah, that was, I got really inspired, my wife is from the Philippines, so I got really inspired to build a P2E gaming guild and, have a win-win-win for all of the constituents of that. But it just ended up not working out that way for me.
And I think the problem is with games that they bring, like when Web3 gaming failed, right? When it failed, like you could say that Axie was the pioneer, right? It was the pioneer. It kind of showed us what was possible. I mean, It was assisted by maybe the biggest bull market that we've ever had, because you can argue that there's more total value in the bull market we've just come out of. But in 21, the concentration of liquidity was much higher. It's much higher concentration. There was less. You remember how much gas fees were on Ethereum, right?
I remember giving out about it weekly in the podcast I had at the time. Yeah, and just saying, I give up, I despair of Ethereum. I'm done with it.
But that actually, in a way, protected people from what we currently see, where you have almost zero gas fees, where they go in, they can, let's say you were given a very small airdrop of Ethereum. Like back when gas fees were high, you held that and you hoped for more. Now, if you're given a token on any of the L2s, L3s, you can instantly dump it and you've lost basically nothing. And some wallet apps even provide you free gas. So like, while I say I don't think we need to go back to those days of like high gas fees, we do need to realize that the velocity of the money hasn't necessarily improved the value proposition that we're seeing in space. And I strongly believe, like, back in that day, gaming was supported by all of those factors we don't have now. So if you look at the quality of the game itself, it was really about the extraction from the game and how much you could get. And the fact that was supported by a rising market with high liquidity across a few tokens. So 100%. Now
unsustainable.
So now what we're looking to do is bring that revenue in from Web2. Because if you look at the top kind of casual games, or like hybrid casual, as we call them, like it's really easy to get into, but they have a bit of depth, and they can make $110 million a month. Now, if you look at the distribution to get that, they're probably spending between $60 and $80 million a day. And that market in itself is essentially paying for advertising in different apps. Whereas what we're building from the ground up with communities such as YGG, Gabby Dyson is one of our advisors, by the way, with YGG, with all of these guilds across the Philippines. I was at the Play Summit in Manila. Really fantastic to meet so many people committed to this. Is we're giving them the opportunity to take part in something where they don't directly have to benefit from the game. So the game itself is allowed to make money. It doesn't have to pay people like a neurosurgeon for turning up. But what they do is, by spreading the word of the game and shilling the game's bags and shilling themselves, they get income from the nodes. And we're very careful about this. Like, there's only ever going to be a certain amount of nodes. So that means that as the network grows in value, everyone gets that uplift.
Right. That sounds pretty good. So look, let's maybe just for the kind of average everyday person who's tuned into this show who wants to learn more, one of the key kind of types of people we were trying to serve when we started was to make everything very user friendly for the normies out there who maybe aren't as deep into crypto as everyone here are. So
100%.
if you could just walk us through, like at a very high level, what does it work like? So at the very base, Warp is a layer 1 on Avex, completely independent C chain that you've set your own rules in terms for how the network operates, and the nodes that people can buy are validated
validate the network
for the network.
Yeah. So the network, like our network, is essentially designed to provide value. It's designed as a medium of exchange. So it's a currency sending network. There are lots of things that will happen, utility and all of this. But the main thing to realize or to understand about our business is we're not an AWS. We're not trying to make money from transaction volume on our own network. We have our own token, which is on C-Chain, which is a division of Avalanche. But our own network is to allow us to build the decentralized apps and services that games need independent of chain. So we will never put a game under our own flavor of chain. So you will never have to bridge or do any fancy DeFi stuff to play one of our games. Our games can be on Avalanche or Immutable, or on Ronin or on Abstract. And we have partners with 8 of the different chains. The idea of us is you will play a game where you want to play on your phone. Like you can play Gladiator Mayhem on your phone, Legends of Illumia, or you can play Tollen, and you can play that on the Abstract sort of site, and more places coming soon as well. Like we want games to go where you find them. We don't want a person to have complicated onboarding. And those games go to those chains and communities that best suit them. So if you're into, I don't know, skill games, like you risk to earn, then you're going to be going for Abstract because there's a lot of that kind of stuff there. That's why we have Tollen. If you're going for more general purpose gaming, there's games on Immutable. So for example, we have like Legends of Illumia and Avalanche, which is really sort of a bit of everything. So we have Gladiator Mayhem. And by doing this, we're not gating access to games. We're not requiring those games tokens to use our token. Like they are completely independent. They have their own tokens. And what we give them by having our own chain is the access to do fancy things like having an NFT DEX, or where you can swap your game items within the game. And that is like, we're doing it for the tech, right? So all of the Web3 things that are complicated and painful between lots of different chains, we are the guys in the middle who seek to make that easy as part of the many things we do as a publisher.
Okay, so just in terms of the revenue flow, so the things that are around, because as I understand it, 20% of your publishing revenue goes to buy back tokens, or something along those lines. Is that right?
It's a mix of buyback and direct share. So the nodes have to do work. So you have to work to validate our network. Like we cannot be giving people revenue for essentially sitting there. That's a basic how we test fail for those of you who know what that is. So the nodes do work on our network, and then that allows 20% of our revenue to go back to those nodes. Now that can be in the form of like buying our token, or it can also be sending that amount of money in our token to those nodes as rewards. So the whole point is that 20% of the token supply is for those nodes, 20% of the revenue is coming to that. And when the token supply, when the revenue exceeds the emissions from the current token supply, we switch on to purely revenue. So there's guaranteed income from having it from the tokenomics. And then after that, they are weaned onto revenue. So we have 3 years of constant emissions. And our hope is that we are making more money on the games so that we can switch them onto tokens with the origin of our revenue. And this makes it a lot simpler because that means that as the network grows, that 20% becomes bigger. And then that also means we're not tied on the dependency for our token to always go up. Obviously, our token has a medium of value. Obviously, we want lots of utilization of that. We've got lots of things to do. We want people to trade and use this. But we are not designing this to become like a super mega Bitcoin. We're designing this to become more valuable in time, like a very like a good stock, something that will start out small but become a good stock, and to be able to be used for campaigns, for things that interact with the guilds, to allow people in the gaming industry to essentially use our token wherever they are in the world to interact and get services, B2B services for their games, and of course the consumer facing side as well.
So B2B services for the games. Can you give me an example of that?
So, for example, maybe Xiao, I'll bring you in on this. How would the games like potentially spend their earnings from their warp nodes to go to the guilds?
Yeah, so when it comes down to it, what makes it really special is that, when you work with guilds, they're really essentially a distribution model for user acquisition, right? And the real benefit is, instead of looking to gain vanity metrics through farming, you're actually able to provide real value by creating reward pools and leaderboards, and the opportunities to utilize the revenue that comes in from the nodes as means to support these guilds to hold these game nights, right? There's administrative costs. There's things that are required to really operate this like an actual business. And the reason why, it failed in the past was it was very extractive, because, whether the guild was making more money than the actual studio that was providing it, or vice versa, it was one of the things that was independent and not mutually beneficial, right? It was just who could negotiate the better terms. But the fact that the nodes then give the studios revenue in addition to the guilds, it just is a win-win relationship, because not only do we create kind of like a opportunity for them indirectly and directly, we basically make sure that everyone is incentivized in the right direction, right? So as guilds provide more gamers opportunities to play and compete and gain these rewards, they're able to really do this on a sustainable level, because the more users that come in, the more user acquisition is. Again, it's a constant regenerative loop that just provides real value across the board. So for us, the guilds love these things, and they're more incentivized to actually participate with us week over week, month over month, and just drive and show them that, Web3 gaming is something that is modeled behavior that can be a case study for others to utilize. And I think that's the real value of the nodes themselves, in addition to the tokens.
And as just going back briefly to the B2B side of it, right? So I don't know if this is widely known, but in Web2, there are various companies that you essentially pay to do advertising for your game. And many of these companies, because they work in games, have kind of gamified it. They've like Duolingo'd the process. So you would actually buy tokens, and you would buy they usually call them credits, right? So you could go to, something like Superscale or any one of these companies that does user acquisition, and you buy 20 credits a month. And they're not like real credits. You don't keep them. They expire. They're Web2. You can't trade them. You can't do anything. So let's just say I have a game studio, and we're happily spending our credits on a big user acquisition campaign, and then we find out there's a massive flaw in the game, like people are hacking us or something. What will happen in Web2 is you are committed to spending those credits. You can maybe move them around or spend them on slightly different things, but after all, you are in a SaaS model, and you're getting taken for $30K a month, $30,000 a month just for using the services. This is before you even buy a single advert. This is just services. With the warp model, let's just say you have this critical bug, and instead of being like, okay, I'm going to, spend my warp this month on these user acquisition services, I can hold it. So when I do get back to, when I've fixed my bug, I can then do the user acquisition I wanted to do, or I could potentially trade this with another game studio that wants to buy the same user acquisition services. I can say, hey, I go to the open marketplace, here's my 214 warp, and that will buy me a bunch of adverts on these networks in any one of our different services, and they can just exchange that with another studio or another buyer who wants it. So for me, the more important holders of warp are people with a vested interest in making money in games. So having node holders, having access to not only just the token, but they will have access to analytics about the game. And the games on our network brings them into this. A lot of guilds, you must have experience with setting up this yourself. A lot of guilds were very close to becoming functional businesses that could have become sustainable and moved on from being basically supported by the game. So what we're doing is we're providing that stipend from a network of games that your guild might not even be playing. And that stipend will allow you to send your creator to somewhere, to do t-shirts, to do all of these things, to keep your activity high, so that even if we're not actively using your game, you guys are actively supporting Warp and actively shilling any of your bags. Anyone independently shilling their bag for their node, shilling their studio, shilling Warp in a guild, all of that brings value to the network and value to the token. It's basically trying to reverse the tragedy of the commons, where everyone has to extract. Crypto is like that, you know. The tragedy of the commons, for those who don't know, is there is an area of grazing ground called the commons, and everyone's allowed to put their sheep on there and graze it. Now, the way to win this in the game scenario is to use it as much as you can, because there are too many sheep, they will pluck it there. But if you are the last person there and you try to use it moderately, it's still going to disappear. So you have to take everything. And this is what crypto is. Crypto is currently the commons. Everything needs to be extracted. And if you don't extract the most, you are losing out. We see this when people sell airdrops. That the people have to sell first to get the highest price. And if they don't sell, they lose out. And we've seen that with every deep in project, every token, everything like this. What we are doing is we're inverting it. It says, if you act like a club promoter for your guild, you bring more people into your guild, you get more deal flow because you have a stipend. That means you're not reliant on one game paying you. You're reliant on a network of games where some of them are failing, some of them are succeeding. And some of those games that are failing, they can then obviously sell their Warp to, you know, increase their, like, to build the game better or do things like that, fix it. So it's really about, you know, upending the current model and trying to make a sensible B2B play that brings in everyone with a vested financial interest in gaming succeeding.
Yeah, it sounds like the incentive structures are really well aligned, from as far as I understand it so far. So just to touch on one thing that's come up a couple of times is this concept of deal flow. Do you want to walk us through maybe how that works in terms of, like, if you're a guild, what is that deal flow in relation to? Because presumably if you're a guild, you've got a node or multiple nodes. Okay, actually, let me ask a more basic question. Do you have to be a guild to have a node and vice versa? Just, Matt, you mentioned that you have to work to get your...
So there's two different things. You can be a node holder, right? So if you're a node holder, you're invested in the success of the project, and maybe you've invested in other games before, you want to potentially have an edge. So you might get that node to be part of the community in that way. And we've been selling those nodes to that. But for a capital guild, there is an expected level of commitment to get a node. And Xiao, I'll let you take this one because it's really your bag. Just really stress about how they qualify for a guild and what that means, right? That it's not just that, but it's the opportunities that come with.
Yeah, I mean, it comes with an extensive vetting process, to be fair, right? One, it's usually recommended from a board of advisors, the team itself, people who have been working with gaming and Web3 and have a reputation that's obviously positive. In addition to the vetting, I actually hold one-on-one meetings to establish, you know, the cadence, the kind of the rules of engagement of how our expectations in terms of how we look to meet with every guild and how we engage for our different games, as well as our ecosystem, right? We have Warp Nation, which is our platform that we want to make sure and drives value to all the gamers. This is super critical for our guilds to support our platform, because this is, again, not just deal flow, but opportunity for people to better recognize their guilds and what they've been contributing in terms of the ecosystem. Not every game is going to be mobile. Not every game is going to be PC based. Not every game is going to be platform, console. Gamers come from a wide variety of sources, and we need to be able to drive value to each one of them. And so our platform allows you to segment these things in ways that make sense. Geolocation is also super important, right? If you speak English, if you speak Tagalog, if you speak Spanish. We want to make sure you find the guild that will support your native language and drive value for you, because it's a lot easier to play with a guild when you speak the same language. All these things are a construct of how we look to build out our Warp Capital Guild. On top of those things too is, do they have the business mindset to be a mature guild that can actually maintain and sustain deal flow? We are performance based in terms of like what this looks like. So for us, it's like we're not looking for any guild to just host a game night and to do things in a way that is casual. We're looking for guilds that have sustainable models to utilize the nodes that we provide, the tokens that come with, and the reward pools and the systems that come with. So for us, when we talk about deal flow, one, there is a natural incentive for us to make sure that to give value to our studios, that they're not paying the highest dollars and create individual buckets of, deal flow in terms of like contracts, right? These things happen all the time. What the problem is that, you may not get the same value from each one of these things independently, but as part of Warp Capital Guilds, we create a bell curve. We create a flow that, hey, depending on what you provide to us, we're able to give you, rewards within the game, actual monetary value, whether it's fiat for our leaderboards, our ecosystem, so that they can run the behind the scenes, make sure they hire staff, have moderators, community managers, people that will actually contribute and show value. Because it's not just like the game itself in terms of being played, but obviously, when you look at this world where attention arbitrage is the number one value of how we kind of prioritize things in our ecosystem and gaming, or just Web3 as a whole, like you have to make sure you have social media amplification, creators who actually create content that you see on Kick, Twitch, Abstract if you're looking to do Web3, or Blaze, so that we work with all of these guilds to show that they have intrinsic value and on different layers and different levels, where we make deals in a way that leans into what they do best. And as we can support them, whether it's Clippers, right, which is now the new meta because of the death of Infofy, like we want to make sure we give those creators value within these guilds on incremental levels. And then for us, it's not only establishing a competitive edge in terms of making sure we work with the best guilds and give them the best value for our studios, but also lean into the guilds themselves so that they can do things, because they ask of us, right? Like with Warp Nation, it's like, hey, can we do things where we can filter just our guild, where we can filter just Warp Capital, so that they see that there's a longer horizon for what's going on, instead of the traditional transactional model, which is like, hey, let's have a game night, let's focus on user acquisition and move on. And then they just keep doing this and creating, deal flow with other games and other studios. They can just do it in one shop under ours, because again, we have 4 concurrently, but we're always adding, right? We have over 100, 150 games in the pipeline that we're constantly doing the same level of due diligence that we do for our guild. So that's a kind of a long story short, but you can see the real value of how the nodes, the tokens incentivize everyone in a way that, as long as we're all contributing, adding value, we're amplifying each other socially, as well as within our individual like Discords or Telegram chats, there's just this constant flow of opportunity for us to keep doing this in a way that just everybody wins. And I think that's the hardest part, because when you got into this, that was the ethos, but you could see how both the tragedy of the commons and just the failure of greed, right, falls into it. We're being extremely generous with Warp and how we look at our nodes and the value that we do.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, the guilds are quite different in the world of Warp versus, like, say, in times gone by, where, for example, I'll just use an example to demonstrate the model. But we had, like, Pegaxi was one of the games in the guild that I set up, and largely speaking, the role of the guild there was to provide the digital assets for the players to play with, so that they could earn, and then we had a revenue split essentially from what was made by playing in the game. In your world, it sounds like it's much more like, like more like a business, more like a marketing partnership. It's about distribution. It's about getting more bums on seats, so to speak, players in the game.
Exactly. I mean, because look, players in the game and bums on seats is what gives the game the money to distribute stuff to the guild. Now, games are still welcome to distribute things to guild, and many of our games do. For example, Gcoy gave out battle passes to distribute that and get more holders. and to get more attention on what they're doing. Their fantastic work with their ability to put, like Street Fighter style, fully done 3D stuff in Discord. The ability to, have NFTs that can be turned into fighters. Like we've got forge keys given out to guilds from Gladiator Mayhem. We have Tollan VIP passes given out to guilds. Like this can still happen, right? What we've seen, but what doesn't happen is that the game loses out, because if it's ROI positive for the guild to essentially just possess those things and to sell them and farm them, the game is losing out on their potential revenue to sell them to other people. Now, where the game succeeds, right, is bringing in Web 2 players, bringing in other Web 3 players who want to engage in their marketplaces to buy assets because they enjoy playing the game, or they want to engage in risk to earn series of this. The game under our methodology is allowed to be, in Web3 terms, they call it extractive, but in reality, that's called a business. You cannot keep a non-extractive business alive. You need to extract more money than you spend. Otherwise, you can't exist. So it's like everything is extractive, because that's describing entropy. We require more energy to live than we give out to the rest of the world. If we didn't, we would be generators and the matrix would actually work. And don't give the AI any ideas, but none of this could really work. You couldn't have a game that was not making money, giving away money, where people in the guilds were profiting far more than the game. Because the game at that point should have been selling its own stuff if there was demand to buy it. And that's an incentive model. You do not want to be competing with your customer for your goods, right? And it's just like how GameStop give away games for like, the joke is it's like 5 consoles, 70 games, including rare editions. You get $3 of store credit. Like there is an in between. There is an in between GameStop and in between paying someone like a neurosurgeon just for turning up for 30 minutes to a game night and giving them a 3F NFT that they can flip for 12F the next day because it's revealed to be rare. Like there is value capture here, and that needs to be understood as to why that works. The guilds work as a business when they can bring in people into their guild, external to their guild, that will open up their wallets and put their proof of work into that game. The game is not sustainable if everyone playing it, if every single person is ROI positive. That defies the laws of financial physics. We have the law of thermodynamics, but in our industry, we've decided that doesn't exist in finance terms. We've decided that you can have a perpetual motion wheel, you can have a constantly increasing revenue from a token that will go up. We've had many projects saying things like, "Oh, we own our own chain, therefore we make the money off the fees." It's like, who are you paying to run the chain? You have to pay fiat for your AWS. You have to pay the people to provide the chain. Like, you're not making money unless people want your token. This goes back to what you were saying earlier about a controlled supply, right? Just because there's few of it doesn't mean it's valuable. If the game is wanted, it's wanted by a mix of people who want to play, people who want to engage with it and trade in it, and some people who, through their skill or commitment to the game, will actually be ROI positive. But ROI positive needs to be made up for in work. If you get $10 out of a game and you put nothing into the game, if you have brought $12 worth of players into that game, I'm happy to pay you that $10. If I've given you $10 and you brought no one, or you've essentially just taken it, then you're a net negative to the game. So what we do by supplying them with the network revenue in general is we lessen that pressure and we allow the games to be situated better. So that's kind of how it works. It's complicated. Like things are always complicated. I want them to succeed. I want them to get a come up. But we can't do it at the expense of the games, because if you take their money away, they can't develop. Like you want fantastic games, you want high quality games, you want games that are making $110 million a month. If that happens, every one of those guilds who earns nodes will be able to send like their top people to anywhere in the world to go to conferences. They'll be able to make millions of t-shirts, recruit tons of members. Like this all works if everyone works, right? We always say it's like free money. It's not free money. Sitting in an internet cafe in Manila is very hot and it's very difficult. And to do that for an entire day, grinding a 2D game for less than a bag of rice and a Jollibee is not anyone's idea of fun. Like, that is a job, right? What we want is we want people to enjoy those games, to play those things, and maybe get vouchers for Jollibees, or maybe get a free drinks upgrade, or maybe get the ability to win $10, $20, or to bring in 5 people and get some. We want this to be a mix of fun activities they normally do,
Right.
and encouraging others to participate makes everything much more equitable. This is what I love about Deepin. You own your own data, you own your own, you have more agency, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And you play for fried chicken, apparently.
That's why we all got into Deepin, or well, most of us. Okay, so like I like to think of these things in terms of value exchange, right? So like for a game developer, and like this could be super short, like because I want to do a few of these, just a super short answer, if you don't mind. So for a game developer, say I have a game idea and I'm developing it. The value for me is that I get to plug into Warp and I get a bunch of ready to go guilds who are going to send me gamers. So I've got distribution straight away, right?
Yep.
Pretty much. And I'm going to pay something for that, but it's going to be, it's going to make a lot of sense and it's going to be sort of equitable. And I'm going to come out, like the value I get out is going to be greater than what I put in terms of, let's call that be it in, for want of a better.
Well, it's revenue share. So it's whatever you're earning, we take a percentage of that. So you're always profiting. So we pay for the user acquisition as part of it. And then we share the revenue as a result.
Right. Okay.
So it's not necessarily like there is a SaaS model, but that's different from publishing. But yeah.
Right. Okay. So the value for the game publisher is, or
they don't pay anything unless they succeed, unless we succeed together.
Right. Okay. So it's a win. It's a win-win, or
yep,
or lose-lose, depending. Okay. So for a node operator, so say I know you guys are selling nodes. Say I say, all right, I'm going to buy a node. What's the value exchange for me? I'm going to run it. I'm going to pay for my electricity. It's going to validate the network. Does it host games as well? Is there like a?
And there's some plans for doing much more with nodes in the future, especially related to we're also partnering with Arc Terminal. So there's the possibility that we might turn these into kind of like mini Claudes for gaming and stuff like that. But that's further down the line. The main value is that they earn Warp tokens every month. And we have a pro node. Yeah, it's the same. They earn, but the good thing is, like, there's a fixed amount of these nodes. There's never going to be more. And in the future, the holders will be able to actually break them up into smaller sections and sell them on.
So kind of RWA, fractionalize them.
Yes, but that's on the holder to do it. That's not on us. We can't determine that. Like, you as an owner can decide whether you want to do that or whether you don't. And the whole point of this is you can hold, you can validate, and you know that there's not going to be any more nodes minted, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm definitely keen on getting a node. So that's just something that's going to sit in my office or wherever, in my basement, running forever, validating the network.
Yep, it's a software node, so you can, for example, work with our partners Deep for hosting. I think there's also potential that there will be hardware versions, but we're still kind of looking into that. Obviously, it's good to have hardware versions because eventually we do want to add more tooling to the network that will require more of the nodes to have uptime. But yeah, it's going to run forever, and as long as the games are making revenue as a whole, that revenue will be shared, and that's exactly what we do. And there's token emissions for 3 years to protect that handover from revenue. And those token emissions are designed at our current market cap, which is roughly the same as our launch, to be ROI positive. There's a node calculator on the site that you can look at.
Yeah, I was looking at the calculator. Yeah, it's very interesting. It's very interesting to see. Obviously, there's always at this stage of any business, there's always like the unknown unknowns when you look into the future and you kind of try to look at the crystal ball and see where everything's going to go. But yeah, I mean, I think gaming, I feel like in 2026, people play games. They've always played games. The only thing is they evolve. So
And look, Web3 gaming is a tiny section. Like the actual gaming market is bigger than movies and films combined. Like 90% of Generation Z identify as a gamer in some way. I mean, there is gaming content, gaming movies, Mario's movies too, like gaming series, Fallout, all of this. Like it is now part of our culture in a way that it wasn't when we were growing up, you know, like the whole like basement dwelling thing, it still exists, right? But it's totally different now.
It's totally different now. I mean, I mean, when I was like 19 and playing games, everybody that was playing games was the same. Like you could, like the demographic was male for starters, and definitely a bit kind of like on the nerdy side.
Probably listening to metal or, you know, like in that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
it was
like
definitely similar.
Yeah. Now it's totally different. Now you go on Instagram, there's gamer girls from every place you can imagine, and it's crossed. So it's definitely crossed the gender divide, the age divide. Your cat's eyes are very unusual.
It's half an owl, half a cat, and it just won't leave me alone because it's
a very unusual looking cat. My goodness.
Yeah. Apologies for that. It's like my wife's gone up to pick out my daughter, and the cat didn't get fed. So now I'm in the dining room and getting the cat's attention.
Doing dinner service. Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
So right. So okay, I kind of get where the different value chain, how that works. So essentially, more games, more gamers, everything is set up towards the more games and the more gamers equals like value flow, revenue flow, whatever shape that takes, whether it's in a warp token or some other format. Coupon.
I mean, this is the best thing about having 8 different chain partners. So we're actually partners with these chains. So we have a strategic partnership or a games publishing, preferred publishing partnership with chains like Immutable, with Scale, with like Beam, Vara, Vayner chain, Avalanche, of course. And that is really like, it allows the games to be where they are, right? So if those games do well, their chains do well. If those chains do well, they can spend grants and attract more games. It's trying to make sure that the actual network value, it gets captured in some way and returned to both holders and essentially what I like to say is like promoters, you know, people who are bringing other people in.
Right. Yeah, sounds very interesting. So what does it look like in 5 years if everything goes swimmingly well?
If everything goes really well, we would be around about the market cap of 10 cent. I mean, it took, when I joined King, that sold for I think it was like $5.8 billion it sold to Activision, which then got bought by Microsoft. Like I was employee number 1,000. And I remember that they had a 10-year party. Like the things move faster these days because, you know, if you're a publisher and you don't have to build the games yourself, you can move faster. In 5 years, if we can hit a good like mid-level publisher kind of thing like CD Projekt Red with a market cap of 3 or 4 billion, we would be looking at only 5,000 individual earning slots from our sort of 3,000 nodes. And they would be earning a very decent chunk of that. This would allow us to hyperspeed the ability to bring in more players. And for people who are those early holders, it would give them the ability to fractionalize those nodes to quite a lot and still take considerable earnings home. And they can fractionalize them. And we would probably even buy back nodes at that point, fractionalized versions of those nodes to give to more games. Because let's say you're a holder and you have 5 enterprise nodes and we have a $3.6 billion market cap. I mean, we would be like, okay, we would love for you to split those, one of those into 10 nodes, and we would happily buy those 10 at the going value, which would be very good. But that earning from those nodes would then power a ton of these studios. So like that's something that these become like very powerful assets that over time earn such a good chunk of the bloody cat. Maybe it just goes on my truck. It's going to be happy over there. But yeah. And I've been a pirate today. But that's what it is. Like these nodes in the future will be worth a metric fuck ton of money. That's why they will be split. We like with the best
Why
will
would
in the
you want to
world.
split it though if it's making me a metric fuck ton of money?
What's that? Sorry.
Why would I want to say I'm a node owner? Why would I want to split my node if it's making me a metric ton of money? What's the value?
The advantage for potentially splitting your node is that what you retain from that node is still making you more money. And by bringing in more games, we grow the network.
Okay.
So let's just say
there's an upper cap on.
Exactly. Let's just say there's a game we want to buy or get in that is earning $110 million a month. And we've run out of nodes. And to get our revenue higher and to bring in more audience, anyone can say, okay, I will happily split my node so that you can bring in this game and plug them into the network. And now they're on the network and now they're distributing that revenue because they get their kickback. So this is where it comes in. It's like we can use these nodes and this division of nodes to invest into things, just like an investment. That's why you'd want to do it, because you were investing in it to get a chunk out of it. You could, for example, say, I'll split my node and give it to this, and then that studio's earning, I don't know, let's just say a burn rate of $20,000 a month for a small indie-ish studio. You giving them that node might be all you need to invest in them and take 50% of their entire company, because that is something that will earn them enough income to keep it going forever. So it's basically about giving you the opportunity and the insights and that to use these to grow the entire network and also for your own benefit in the future. Because
so it's like an investment vehicle. So I'm essentially rolling gains into new investments, hoping that it
as you like. I mean, it's up to you. You can split it and you can lend it. So if you can potentially lend it to a non-games project or something that you believe in. You can say, hey, I will split my node into 10 and I will lend you 3 for a certain time. Or I will lock them in a contract for liquid staking or there's so many things you will be able to do, right? We don't need them to be split. You can just keep the same thing and earn the money off that. But as this network grows and as more things happen, there might be exciting opportunities for you to do that so that you can end up with, I don't know, a share of the earning of all the things that you get forever. There's loads of different structures to this. And it's basically offering you options, for example.
Cool. So you said there's a limited amount of nodes. How many will there be, how many are there in total?
So there was 3,000 in total, but if you break them down into the divisions of nodes, there's Enterprise Node, Syndicate, and Pro. There's effectively 5,000 Pro slots. There are actually significantly more Enterprise nodes today than like we were expecting in a way. It's very good. Actually, our most popular node really is, in terms of the interest, is the Enterprise node. There's the $5,000 node, because not only does that get increased earnings from the other ones, but that will have the most access to more features further down the line as well.
Very good. All right. We're coming up on the hour, so I'm just wondering, is there anything? Is there any key things, any questions I didn't ask that I should have about your guys' token?
No, I
don't. Bullish on the token and the nodes.
I mean, aside from like in general, like with tokens, right? When you've seen like deep in projects release tokens, right? What is it that has been typically a token's meant to do for these deep in projects? Would you say? I'm going to give you some questions now.
Well, that's the $1 million question, right? I mean, I think what it should do is what I always advise it do is provide some sort of, it should be baked into the utility of the actual operational side of whatever it is that it's underneath. So like, if you want to think about it like the oil to the ecosystem or whatever. So it needs to be baked in. It shouldn't just be a marketing tool or a fundraising tool, because I think those days are behind us. I think if it was 2017, sure, use it for fundraising. It's like crowdfunding, but with digital assets. Great, let's go. But it's not 2017 anymore. And I think in the last sort of 9 years, I guess, at this stage, it's the market has just completely changed. It's a completely different.
And I think it's because those, and like, again, I'll phrase this as a question. Would you say the market has changed because of those things in 2017, poisoning the market against deepin? Or would you say that the wider market has changed despite those things? Like, would you say that that model has caused the market to be the way it is in deepin, especially since I'm not necessarily a full-on deepin guy as much as Shao, but would you say that that extractive kind of model has poisoned the space a bit on deepin, or would you say that the actual world surrounding it has changed so that that model no longer works? And do you think it's a good model?
No, I mean, I think when it works, it's great. But I think a lot of deepin didn't. I think the thing that a lot of deepin didn't really take into consideration was how much effort they would have to make on the demand side. I think a lot of these projects were thinking to themselves, let's build cool tech, and didn't really think about like what do we need to do to actually sell our cool tech to people who are going to pay us, let's say, fiat, so that we can fire off our flywheel that we've designed, where fiat comes in and it turns into tokens through whatever mechanic. And those tokens are then emitted, as rewards. And then, and then there's an actual flywheel that works. Because if your flywheel has this assumption that there's going to be all this fiat flowing in, then you have to do the work to get the fiat flowing in. Otherwise, and that in that way. But I think in the space, generally speaking, if fiat hasn't flown, like anytime we have a pump or a bull run or anything like that, it's because people take their hard-earned cash and they buy some Bitcoin and they make some gains, and then they take some of that profit off the table and they go put it into some other alt or some other thing. That's typically how the market cycle has worked. So you can't just ignore that and go, well, we're going to have this token and it's going to have a billion, units, and it's going to be great. Buy it, guys. Like
I agree with you. I really do agree with you, and I think there's two things about this. Like, the exciting part of the tech is obviously fantastic, and the idea of selling nodes to raise money by selling the nodes does tie you into essentially a revenue share that you should be comfortable with as a company, and you're willing to sell X amount of your nodes for X% of your future revenue. Let's just say in our case, it's 21% of our future revenue or 20% of our future revenue. But what you make from that, initial sale, should get you to that point where that investment functions, right? It shouldn't be that the return should be calculated on your token going from a very low place to a very high place to get you there. It should be calculated on, as a business, we sell out, I don't know, let's just say, for an example, someone sells 10,000 nodes and makes $1 million, right? They should be able to, within that business, make a $10 million business, and then be able to give $1 million to those node holders or more, and obviously more. It's continual because the node holders will have the profit. If you don't understand the mechanics that the node holders are actually not just returning the income they spent on the node, they're going to make many times X this. Like, this is the point of this, is that they committed early into doing this and providing you this service, right? And that's a relationship you have with them as a consumer and with them as someone who is like them part of your network.
Partners,
and
really.
Exactly, you're partners in building this together. And this is what's exciting to me, is the ability to say, like, to these node owners, like, a lot of people talk about governance and things like this. It's more about saying, like, what can we do as a group? Like, what looks exciting? Like, here are the game analytics, here are the revenue. Like, if you're just in it for the finance, that's perfect. But that is also good that you who invested into nodes makes money, because you who invested into nodes will invest into more nodes and to other things and to potentially other projects we have. So the whole thing of, like, I have one node that's making me a shit ton of money, why would I want to divide it? You don't have to. But if you yourself are making a shit ton of money, you might think, I want to make more money. So I'm going to put some of that into this game I like, or I'm going to put something this in my other project. Like this allows our projects through holders to fund the things that they believe in as well and grow their bags and grow the industry in general.
I'm going to jump in for a second. I think I completely agree with what Matt's saying, right? The real versatility that I don't have with my current DeepIn projects outside of just getting a token and then spending it, whether it's in the ecosystem or just cashing out, is the fact that you can bring this back into our ecosystem within the games, within the guilds. Like the same way you're talking about investing in the games, technically you could be doing this with guilds and partnering these things. We'll be essentially a marketplace for these things because of the utility and the value of being able to fractionalize. So the reality is it's just more of, when you take something like a gaming ecosystem and you have all these different partners and these different opportunities to divest and then reinvest into others, is where I think we unlock. And we haven't even talked about like RWOs and game bonds and like the other things that we look at in terms of our flywheel, because the reality is, you know, we're really having the experience of 20 years plus, right, of understanding how the gaming markets work and actually bringing it to the blockchain. And I think there's so many things that we didn't get to talk about and discuss that really show you the opportunities, because the ability to fractionalize, the ability to share and to be part of something more and have ownership and to be fully dedicated to what gaming is why I think so many miss the mark in the early years, and where we're going to be setting that trend, you know, in 2026 and onward. So for us, you know, to kind of wrap this up and these things, is there's so much more to touch upon, but what we're doing today is providing a sustainable ecosystem for all parties to really come back to celebrate and to just keep working, because all the incentives align in a way that just delivers. And everything that I've done, when you talk about the end game, which is the guilds and the gamers, they're excited for once. They're excited because they can get multiple games. They can get multiple opportunities to work with studios, publishers, people who are building. They get transparency. They get access to these things in terms of play tests, quality control. They can create content. Like there's so many things that go above and beyond that wasn't before, because it's not based off of hype and speculation. Yes, to a degree, just because there's tokens involved, there's gaming involved, and opportunities to do, you know, we haven't even talked about prediction markets, because that's another thing that's being gamified within the ecosystem of these things, whether it's the Super Bowl or whether it's literally esports now doing prediction markets, and traders using trading as an esport as well, you know. So there's lots of different ways that the flywheel is kind of pushing
exactly.
This market.
And I think it's important to note, right, when we set out to do this, we didn't set out to say, hey, we're going to be a new Steam, or we're going to be competing on these things, and we're going to be dragging our own community up. It's like there's an old comic that says like, oh, all of the existing standards are terrible. Let's make a new standard that unifies them all. And then it's like, oh, now there's another standard. Now there's 21 standards when there were 20. And what we're doing is we're going to communities where they already are. That's why we partner with YGG. That's why we partner with chains. Like, you don't have to completely burn everything to the ground and start again, even if those things are not optimal. Like, those communities want to be in that community with each other. They formed those bonds. They have that bond. They have friends. They have their processes. And we go to them and empower them, as opposed to saying, leave everything you're doing and come into this brand new community that you don't know what's going on yet. So that's why it works better.
100%.
How much of what you touched on there, Darryl, is actually built already? Like, is
quite a lot. So we've got 48,000 people on the platform. We have questing, with more questing coming from games. This week we are like doing the front end so that you can visualize all of the staking stuff that goes on. We have all the games up there, and I think it's like 18 to 20 guilds already on the platform at www.warpnation.com. We did an airdrop yesterday night, actually, for SBT holders, just for Valentine's Day, for a little bit of fun. It's hilarious how many people run straight to the markets to sell $1.53 of tokens, but we love them for it as well. But you can mint an SBT that will eventually turn into a gamer card, which will eventually turn into a reputation system, which will link in into all of what we've been saying about providing value. So the guild, for example, is having a game night on a shooter. They'll be able to see people who are in our ecosystem and say, hey, do you want to come to our guild and do a gaming night? There's like $50 and I'll pay you 10 warp or whatever to go in there and participate. And the price will be really good.
And that's actually, that can actually be done with our AI too. I mean, again, there's a lot of things that we're building out where it can be a lot of automation. So the long story short is the answer is yes. So much is already built in. Like when we went out to guilds, we had over 20 guilds that we basically assembled to be our Avengers within the Warp Capital Guild ecosystem, because they've all been established, they've all been there, and we're just slowly, adjusting in terms of bringing additional guilds. But to be fair, like to Matt's point, is it's just we're bringing things together in a way that naturally should have been. And I think that's the real value proposition, is that we're not trying to create something doesn't exist, but more importantly, we do it in a way that's collaborative, right? We're tired of PvP. We want to be able to, hey, if you're a guild in another guild, like, you don't have to compete. And more importantly, let's get together and actually join reward pools. This way, everyone wins.
Yeah. Interesting. All right, guys. Any final words before we wrap up?
Just to say that we will be launching our token again on Black Hole decks. We're currently on Uniswap, but we're moving over to the pure Avalanche decks in partnership with Black Hole. So look out for WRP on there. Make sure that you check the X handle at Warp Game Chain. Keep safe whenever you're looking at contracts. There are lots of fake things around. We will never DM you, etc. on that side. Not financial advice, but I say I really love working for Warp. We are real players. That's been it from me.
Yeah. Like, I'm super interested to get more involved. I'll be DMing, I'll be sliding into your guys' DMs later on. And
Awesome.
Yeah, no, I just think gaming is probably something I should really take another look at. On the Web3 side.
It's getting there.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll fix both of it. If we can fix deep in and gaming at the same time, I think we deserve our own like little house at F Denver.
yeah, little award anyway. All right, gents, thank you so much for joining us today, and a huge thank you to all of you who are tuned in and who will see this later on any one of the many places that we stream to now. It's you'll find this episode on X, YouTube, LinkedIn, and also Facebook. Not sure why we're on Facebook, but we are. And also on all your favorite podcast platforms sometime later today, tomorrow. So yeah, thanks to everybody who's tuned in. And until next week, be kind to each other out there. Bye.